Hey,
What is up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Happy Hour Hoops, your one stop shop for enjoying a cold beverage, listening to our ice cold basketball takes, everything NBA all the time. You guys know the deal. Last week, we did the Eastern Conference preview, went over every team in the East, what we thought about each team, kind of split it up into categories. Today, we are doing a bit of the same with the Western Conference though. Jake, how you feeling? Are you ready to talk Western Conference hoops?
oh yeah, I love the West. I love staying up way past my bedtime to watch a Trailblazers Timberwolves game. So this is a dream for me. Yeah, we're recording this on a Thursday night, so we're like 10
Mm-hmm.
days away from the NBA season. It's starting to get real, starting to get real prepped up here, getting reading done, get podcasts in, trying to gather as much information coming into the season, and that's what we're here for too. Bringing in what we've got here with our Western Conference preview. And the West, as we kind of touched on last week, the West kind of looking pretty wide open for the first time. I mean, it was pretty wide open last year, I would say too, but the East looks like it has more of the powerhouse teams. The West, even if you're considering the first team, the team in our background here in our list, the Los Angeles Lakers, as the head and shoulders favorite of the West, there's some serious questions about the Lakers and their long term potential here too. So let's get right into it, Donnie. Let's go with the Lakers. What do we got with them here?
Yeah, I mean, so Lakers, obvious contenders, much like the Brooklyn Nets in the Eastern Conference, really just doing as much as they can to create a new definition for the term super team. Obviously, biggest additions or maybe most notable additions, Russell Westbrook and lifelong friend of LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony. I mean, two Hall of Famers. I mean,
Yeah.
future Hall of Famers, without a doubt, for both of them, joining two Hall of Famers, future Hall of Famers who are already on the roster in LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Then, in my opinion, another Hall of Famer that is returning to the Lakers and Rajon Rondo. I mean, just between Russ, Rondo, and LeBron being on the same team, it's like that IQ of basketball is just insane to me, especially
Oh yeah.
Braun and Rondo. But I spent a lot of time talking about that 2 years ago when those two guys were on the same team. Then you bring in a guy like Russ, who just has unmatched energy. And then, even the smaller additions, guys like Malik Monk, Kent
Hmm.
Bazemore, like they are just like we talked about with the Brooklyn Nets in the East. You
Hmm.
just can't really find holes in this roster. And sure, everyone's going to go to the age card. I mean, they're in a win
Yeah.
now situation, but I mean, that's just obvious. Like they were,
Hmm.
whether they brought in older guys or not this season. I mean, you have LeBron James on your team who is, you know, we haven't really seen the decline yet, but he's not getting any younger. Anthony Davis isn't a young buck anymore. So, I mean, it was kind of obvious these guys are in win now mode. It's the same thing with the Brooklyn Nets. So, the old narrative, I don't know, it doesn't really make a difference to me just because of how loaded this team
For
is.
sure. Yeah, for sure. It's something that you can just throw out there if you're trying to slander the Lakers. Like it's the first thing that ever comes in everybody's mind. It's like, oh, but they got all these old dudes on there. It's like, yeah, but the old dudes are some of the best players we've seen in the NBA for the last 15 years. So no, like Carmelo Anthony is not prime New York Mello. He's not hoodie Mello. He's not Olympic Mello. He's late career Mello. Who's
Mm.
that dude is still in games last year for the Trailblazers as the third option, putting up 25 plus point games for them. And if that's a scorer that is much, I'm not trying to slander Kyle Kuzma or anybody else, but who else was on that roster last year that could do that for the Lakers? Schroeder sometimes, but he was, I think, more disappointing than anything else by the end of the season, especially a playoff run. Like they didn't have a guy like that. Now they have two guys. Which I'd bring up Melo first because I think he's the first one that he's. I don't know. I feel like everybody's interested in seeing what Melo can offer on with the team with LeBron, but
Yeah.
you talk about Russ last year. Russ was like at the peak of his powers last year. I mean, Bradley Beal was out. Russ carried the Wizards to pretty much getting into the playoff or getting into the play-in games with his triple-double run that he went on and just the outstanding play that he had and showing that he still had that level to get to. Everybody's worried about how that translates to on-court playing with LeBron James, a guy who notably has always been the guy, controlling the ball, controlling the play. He's the de facto point guard of every team he plays on. And Russ obviously works better as a guy, as the primary ball handler and everything.
Exactly.
But this kind of talent together, I mean, it's hard to just overlook the talent that they've accumulated, and regardless of their age, regardless of their stature, whatever in the league, like there's not a lot of teams that can just match up and be as talented on the court, and that's going to get them by a lot of games, especially when we get it deeper into this Western Conference, where the West has a lot of stars missing this year, a lot of teams that aren't as deep as this Lakers team. So just from a night-to-night basis, regardless of what you think about the NBA Finals, anything, it just seems like during the regular season, the Lakers under Frank Vogel and LeBron have always taken the regular season super seriously. And this is a team that's just better than most of the West on a night-to-night basis. And they should cruise to 55, 60 wins. I would think that's pretty realistic for this team. Yeah. Now, the age thing and the injury,
just like the whole Russ narrative for me is.
Whoa, Dunny, you still there? We might have lost him here, folks. Oh, let's mark this down. 7-ish minutes. Oh, another Dunny. Wild Dunny appeared. There's Wild Dunny.
Let's go. All right.
There's two of us chilling in here. What about Russell Westbrook?
No, the whole Russ narrative for me too is you kind of touched on it a little bit, like him being the ball dominant. Him being the ball dominant guy, that doesn't need to be the case on this Lakers team. Every team that Russell Westbrook has been on before, he's needed to take those shots that everyone had a problem with, that no one wanted to see him shooting the bad percentage, even if he was putting up the triple doubles. That doesn't need to be the case on.
Yeah, no, that's true. Continuing on to the point that Dunny's making here, Russ doesn't need to be the guy, doesn't need to be that facilitator. He doesn't need to be the engine for the offense. He just doesn't. It's not what they're going to need going forward this year. LeBron is that guy. LeBron is the engine of this team. And that's what I was just continuing on your point there, Johnny. LeBron's the engine of any team he's on. And Russ has usually been accustomed to that role. Even with Kevin Durant, that's the role Russ has been accustomed to. And now it's what do we get to see when Russ kind of gets to, float in and out of games and assert his will at certain points? He's going to be fresher and it's going to have more of an impact, especially because you have to imagine Vogel is going to split them up. We're not going to see them on the floor a ton together. I think they're going to be staggered from each other a lot too, to kind of maximize that facilitating that they both do and the ball dominance that they both kind of demand to best suit their skill sets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like we could spend so long talking about this Lakers roster, and we don't need to do that for you guys. No doubt in the title conversation. They're probably second odds on favorite behind the Brooklyn Nets this year. So yeah, you guys are going to be seeing a lot of Lakers on national television like usual, but even more so this year. People are, hyping up Anthony Davis being beefier than years past. He's gotten stronger. So, a lot to like for this Lakers team coming up. No doubt a contender. And then should we go to the second contender here where we got the Phoenix Suns, just because, I feel like we have to give them their due. And they, they made it there last year. They made it to the biggest stage right after adding Chris Paul. And I think they have to stay in this contender conversation just because they didn't make many changes to the team. Booker and Ayton should still be getting better every season. So
well, what's going on? So what's going on with the Ayton stuff? Like, are you worried about that affecting like Ayton, affecting the team in general?
So I was a little bit until, and I'm not just entirely washing it away now because of this, but I was watching First Take yesterday. Stephen A. interviewing Chris Paul 101, hit him with all the hard hitting questions, from vaccine stuff to him asking about his teammate DeAndre Ayton, who is having contract disputes with the Phoenix Suns right now. But it sounds like Chris wasn't too worried because I feel like we see that a lot, especially with young stars nowadays. They have their own demands, and honestly, it's fair if you play at a level like DeAndre Ayton does, or some of these other young superstars on the rise. So it seems like Chris, he wants Ayton to stay. It seems like he thinks that Ayton also wants to stay, but he's also going to try to get his bag that everyone else likes to secure when it's their time to discuss a new contract. So I think, maybe it's just news that people are prying at because it's the off season and we want stuff to talk about like me and you are doing right now. But
yeah, fair.
It is a little worrisome, if that's going to affect some chemistry. Because, I think in years past, Booker might not have been the most satisfied with what he had around him in Phoenix before last year. So definitely something to keep an eye on. But, for the Suns being what they are right now, I think, we shouldn't be too worried about that.
That's fair. And that's just a subplot going forward. Mikal Bridges got to get paid too. It's just going to be but that's not affecting them this year. Those guys are on the team this year. And they're going to be going forward. We put them in this contenders spot right behind the Lakers, but I feel like this is where the West gets really interesting because they were the 4 seed last year. Obviously, they weren't one of the top seeds, and there's competition right there with them. I don't think that they are set apart because of that experience they've got, and I do think that they are one of the best, most complete rosters from top to bottom still before the other teams we get into. Maybe the Jazz are the other team that you could kind of talk about being a complete roster and everything. We just haven't seen it from the Jazz yet. But yeah, it's like another, it's like prove it again, right? Like everybody has questions about the run last year. Come out and prove it again. Let's see Booker take that step and see what he can do as like a super duper star in the league. Is he ever going to be, I think the biggest thing that could decide the West is which young superstar really takes reins and takes over, right? Like, because last year was Chris Paul. Chris Paul's not going to be able to do what he did last year in the playoffs again. I just don't see that at 37, 36, at 38, whatever his age is. Old point guards after a long playoff run. Like, I feel like Chris Paul is going to be banged up a little bit this year, probably not playing a bunch. Back-to-backs, probably be resting, everything like that. It's going to be on Booker. And when we get into the Jazz, talking about Mitchell or Luka, who we know is incredible but hasn't had the playoff success yet. Like, one of these guys is going to have to step outside of the impact that they've currently had and exceed that and carry a team that is not up to the star level of the Lakers and have some of those performances that set them apart from the other. I just think that we've so cluttered up with these young stars. Like, someone's going to have to make a move to get ahead, or maybe it's a back and forth type thing where this is the year that the Jazz get the step ahead, or this is the year the Mavs get the step ahead. I think that's the range Booker is in. He's obviously an incredible scorer, an incredible talent. Let's see them put it together again and be consistent again like that, because I think this team could be the number 2 seed and this team could fall to the 7 seed too. And I wouldn't really be surprised either way.
Yeah. Yeah, I for sure have my fair share of questions putting the Phoenix Suns in this contender, section that we have them in. But I think it's also, benefit of the doubt just from last year. We did have some teams, I think me and you both, that we have right at the top of our next section, which is fittingly oh so close. And these teams are even closer than I think the teams we had in the Eastern Conference, as far as being a contender in the West. And let's start with one that we both strongly agree on could have easily been in the contenders. And that's the Golden State Warriors. Me and you were talking about these guys, right? I know I just faked you out because I faked you out. I skipped the team, but Golden State Warriors.
We
were talking about before we hopped on Golden State Warriors. Clay returning at some point, probably around the holiday season, around Christmas time is when they were eyeing a return for the second Splash brother. Had a great draft, in my opinion. Draymond's still there. Steph's still there. Steph, after the season he had last year, I think he's itching to get back on the court. What do you got for Golden State this year? Why are you so high on them?
So John Hollinger, he's writer for The Athletic, worked in the Memphis Grizzlies front office a couple years ago. He used to be ESPN writer, big analytical guy. He's put out a bunch of analytical tools that NBA writers use, NBA teams use now. Really smart guy. He does previews every year based on his models, his projections, everything. They had the Warriors at 39-43 for this upcoming year on his model. And I think that just kind of shows the variance of what to expect from this Warriors team because, I mean, last year, the Steph-led Warriors team was pretty much that, like an average basketball team battling for the play-in, ended up losing both the play-in games, both their play-in matchups, and not making the playoffs. But this is clearly a team that's much deeper than last year. I think that the hard part about some of those projections is we talked about this last week. No NBA writer or NBA person that you follow will ever really go out on a limb to project an improvement from young guys. It just doesn't happen. And that's where season previews like this sometimes try to miss the mark because no one, it's hard to judge. It's hard to judge how good somebody's going to be. It's hard to judge those factors. But look at the Warriors roster from last year. I mean, Kelly Oubre's gone. Since last week, Andrew Wiggins vaccinated, so that's good. He's playing in every single game for the Warriors now. Happy about that. But they add in Wiseman, who's going to be coming back from injury and should be better in his second year. Maybe he's not living up to the second pick billing this year, but he's still a very good player. I still think he can be a very effective player for them this year as long as he's on the floor. They add in Moody and Kuminga, who are obviously – whatever their debilitations are going to be, it's better than what they were throwing out there on the wing last year every game. Like, I love Juan Toscano-Anderson, but he's not a guy you need playing 30-something minutes a game. Jordan Poole has been a great revelation for them, and who knows, maybe that guy is the third star alongside Steph and Clay at this point. Maybe that's the development he has. And you add in on top of it Andre Iguodala, who is one of the key linchpins, a fucking finals MVP for Christ's sake. That back to the roster. People forget. I don't forget. People forget the finals MVP and just so important to the culture that they've built in Golden State now alongside. He's like Steph's best friend. That's his guy. I just think that this roster is much better suited for this team, for the type of team that Warriors want to run. And then on top of everything else, Klay Thompson's going to be back. We don't know what he's going to get. We don't know exactly when he's going to be back, but he will be back. And the worst case scenario, if he's standing in the corner as a top 5 shooter of all time, that's improving your team no matter what. So I just think they were an 8 seed last year going into the playoffs. There's only room to go up with the additions they made. I just don't see how they could have gotten worse from the last year to this year.
Yeah, I really do just think the Warriors are going to be so close as we have them because, I mean, just the culture didn't change. Head coach didn't change. Steph Curry is still there. Like you mentioned, Klay Thompson, he didn't lose his shooting stroke, an Achilles injury, foot, leg, anything that happens lower body, that doesn't affect your shooting stroke. It's not like he broke his hand. Like you mentioned, I'm sure Klay will have a decline when he first comes back. He's not going to be able to move off the ball as effectively as he has, his entire career. That really isn't going to matter. Steph has created so much attention, just his entire career. Even most we've ever seen was last year. I think a lot of teams are still going to be throwing 3 guys at him when he crosses the court, and they're going to forget that Klay Thompson is the shooter that he is. We haven't seen this guy in 2 years. Yeah. And I really love the addition of Kuminga because I think, in my eyes, he is not exactly, but like he brought a lot of the things that a young Draymond did to this Warriors team. I mean, he
Yeah.
is just athletic. He can rebound. He can defend on the wing. He's a gritty player, and he kind of has, he has a bit of an extensive bag for someone who's not the best shooter. He can score still.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm with you. And then Wiseman too. Like even if he is a letdown for the second pick, like you mentioned, like he's still a 7-footer that is more than capable at scoring the ball. Defense comes with guys like that who are that athletic and talented, and then have the wingspan and size that he does. So I
Yeah.
think it's fair to have, like you said, it is a little weird that 8 seed to put them to the oh so close. Like I see them atop the West, when this season's all said and done. I really do.
I do too. I think that I'd put it. I don't doubt Steph Curry. I don't doubt Seth Curry either, but I don't doubt Steph
Yeah.
Curry for sure. And this is the best team he's had around him since he was making finals.
Yeah.
And I think that in those wide open West, like that's a team that can take advantage of it. All right, let's get into it for Meerkat now. We're
Yep.
very bullish still on the Denver Nuggets, even with the Jamal Murray injury. Maybe he comes back later in the year. Who knows if he'll be 100% when he's able to come back. Regardless of without Jamal Murray, they still have the reigning MVP. They still have a great roster around the Nuggets, around Jokic. And they just signed Michael Porter Jr. to a max deal. He's going to be there for a while. And like you said, no one wants to project the young guys. He could be a guy that steps into like a different level, maybe an all-star level. I don't know if I would go out on that limb, but it's fair to assume that
It's
he's going to
possible.
be, like it's fair. I wouldn't.
That's
like,
not a
look at
crazy
you
take
crazy.
at all. Like
Yeah.
for someone, he like your teammate is Jokic, who just demands the ball. Like he's not a ball hog, but he's just you want the ball in his hands. And MPJ still manages to put up the numbers he does with like barely having the ball. Like this dude creates his own shot. He can catch and shoot. I think MPJ can be an all-star. Maybe we don't see it this year, but that is certainly in the cards for him. I think he deserved the contract he got, and it was smart for the Nuggets to scoop him up while they could. You do not want to see a talent like that walk away from your franchise this young. I mean, they made the right move. I think it's great. I also think their front court of, MPJ, Aaron Gordon, and Jokic, once they get a full offseason together, which they've now had, and the season's right around the corner, I think those three guys can be scary playing on the court together.
100%. I think that this year that's a team that is going to win a lot of games just because, as we were talking about with the Lakers, like the infrastructure's there. Their roster, even without Murray, is just better than a lot of these teams from the top down. And Jokic is so good night to night that they're just going to beat up on a lot of the lesser teams in the West. And no matter what, they are a top 5 team seed in the West. I think that even if they're not near the top, like we would assume, like if Jamal Murray was healthy, I might be putting the Nuggets ahead of the Lakers, honestly. Like that it's about time to consider them as one of the top tier contenders if they're fully healthy, which is why it's such a shame that Jamal is hurt right now. Because they were really, like, even last year, I might have been inclined to pick them coming out of the West last year. And who knows how different that looks if Jamal is healthy in the playoffs, because the Suns get out, obviously, but like, I mean, I don't know. Like it's this team feels like it's a sleeping giant and just waiting for their break to happen. And obviously, it's not going to be the start of this year, but maybe it's when Jamal comes back and if he looks good and everything, like they can just start going.
I actually love them being a sleeping giant because Jokic just
looks like a sleeping giant.
Just on this Denver Nuggets team.
Do we have to talk about the Utah Jazz, or can we just say like the Utah Jazz need to just not be frauds? Like they haven't really changed the roster. The only thing that's changed, Mike Conley changed his number. Like, I don't know what else we can say about the Jazz we haven't said in a year besides roasting them, which is I would love to do, but I don't know if that's the best for this show. So I'm going to defer to you on the Utah Jazz. I think that's the answer because Dunny froze here, and so I think that we don't need to talk about the Jazz. Let's see if he comes back here. I just don't want to talk. I'm so tired of the Jazz. I don't think that Rudy Gobert. I don't think that Rudy Gobert, having him on your roster, I don't think you can win playoff games like that. I said this is a sign. I said this was a sign that we shouldn't talk about the Jazz, because the second I brought up the Jazz, you froze. So I'm like, you know what? That's it. Like,
I know.
Even StreamYard is tired of us talking about the Jazz. Fuck that.
I apologize for the internet connection, folks.
You're
This
fine.
is a bad day. But
no, listen.
Yeah,
listen.
the Utah
ESPN started showing their show Debatable, which I put in our group chat the other day. It's an amazing show.
Oh,
I
yeah.
loved it for the first week, but it's an internet show just like we're doing here. In the last 2 days, they have had 2 guests lag out completely of the show from internet issues. So you know what? It doesn't matter if it's happened on the Worldwide Leader.
Yeah.
It's happened on the Worldwide Leader. It can happen on Trademark Sports, the other Worldwide Leader. So you know what? We're chilling here. But so we can just skip the Jazz, like just come out and prove it.
I mean, not too many, not too many changes for them. I think Donovan Mitchell gets better like he has been. Come out and prove it. Yeah. I like that for the Utah Jazz. We have them because it's fair to have them in the so close.
Exactly.
They'll be there again. They'll probably be the 1 seed for a stretch of time like they were last season. But yeah, I like that. I like leaving the Jazz at, prove it to us.
All right. So the last team in our thing here then is the Dallas Mavericks, who have, maybe the best player in the NBA this year. I don't know. How high are you on Luka's year this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was blown away last year, and I do think he's going to be better this year. So I'm very high on Luka this year. I think it's tough because I don't still really think they have enough around him to make a push to the finals. Maybe they cap out at a Western Conference Finals, but that's why I kind of had them in the so close. I love Luka. Yeah. I want the Mavs, to do well just because he's so electric, and I want a deep playoff push for them just to see more Luka magic in the playoffs. But I think that's just still what they're lacking is,
Is this what they're lacking?
Jay Kidd. Yeah. If you're just listening to this, we have a picture of Jason Kidd, and someone tweeted it and said, "Why does Jason Kidd look like some random steakhouse head chef?" And he most certainly does.
Someone said that
is the reason for the laughter.
He's doing Vin Diesel cosplay in this picture. Like
he's
rocking the Vin Diesel Fast and Furious fit.
Oh my God,
that's the man leading this organization right now. That's
go.
Going forward.
I guess it. Yeah, they do have a change in head coach, so maybe that mixes some things up. Also, I try not to get too excited about preseason, and Boban really isn't a guy who saw too much time on the floor last year. 2 threes in a row last night for my man Boban, dude. 7'3". Yeah, I mean, that guy can rebound and do all the dirty work on the interior. If you can get this guy knocking down shots, I mean, hey man, he can buy some more minutes with that 3-point shot. I'll tell you what, in this day and age of the NBA. So maybe excited for Boban and Luka next year. But I don't know. Is that unfair of me to say? I don't really think the Mavs are ready to make a finals push yet.
No, I don't think so. I don't think this team's done enough. I don't trust Jason Kidd really that much either.
Yeah.
As a head coach, I haven't liked what I've seen from him in Brooklyn in his previous stops. Maybe he's learned it, and he's the one. Like, I think that's why he was so valuable, and why LeBron hired Jason Kidd as an assistant coach for the Lakers. Let's not get it twisted. But LeBron saw the value in having him because he's one of the greatest basketball minds out there, one of the greatest pure point guards we've ever seen in the NBA. And that can only really help Luka, it's having that resource is only going to help Luka going forward. It's just, I don't think that the Mavs are going to be a team that makes the finals push, but Luka still has a chance to take extra steps and be even better. I mean, that's hard to think of how amazing he's been, but he's so young that it's not impossible to imagine the fact that he could take over the league this year, be like full-blown, like, clear-cut MVP, and maybe that's a different trajectory to this team. But I think that more likely they're going to be in the middle of this pack with the teams we were talking about before, kind of battling for the second tier of the West. So let's get into next. We're gonna jump in like last week we did with we're gonna group the last group of teams together here. So which of these teams is closest to the Western Conference Finals? We're going to a team that we haven't touched on yet. Is the Los Angeles Clippers, who are going to be involved in this part. The Trailblazers, who had a tumultuous, not even almost tumultuous summer. Like, it could have been bad, and it's been okay. Ooh. But interesting. The Pelicans, who are just a mess. And the Grizzlies, who, I don't know, the Grizzlies I think are worse this year now with the Adams and I loved Valanciunas on that team. And him missing now is just a really interesting thing. But they're still, it's Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson. Like, that's going to be the engine of this team. So the Clippers without Kawhi Leonard, I think even with the infrastructure we see, that they're clearest, they're the highest on our list with this group. But I think they don't belong. I don't think they belong in close to a contender. I don't think they belong in the contender group. Is this Clippers team in danger of potentially missing the playoff?
Ooh. I don't think I would go that far with the Clippers. I honestly thought I may have even been doing them a disservice having them in this section below the oh so close. I just couldn't put any of the other teams behind them. I think what they did without Kawhi in the playoffs last year, the step up of guys like Reggie Jackson, Terrence Mann, and then Paul George, I think really answered the question. And, obviously he still had some playoff P moments where he wasn't great, but I don't know. I couldn't see, at least in my opinion, I couldn't see this roster missing the playoffs. But,
yeah,
it's the NBA where amazing happens. So maybe if you're not a Clippers fan and you're rooting for them to lose, I guess it could happen. But I just don't see it. I think they're too talented. I think they're well coached. I think they'll still be in the playoff mix, but yeah, I mean, expectations are definitely tampered this year. Just going into the season not having the clause is a tough scene.
Exactly. That's why it knocks them out of that contender tier. I agree with you. They could be included in the the group ahead of us, just because, I mean, they've shown that they can play in those games, even with just Paul George. It's a great infrastructure. Ty Lue's a good coach. But I don't know. It's not a Paul George thing even. Like, I've had a lot of Paul George slander in my lifetime. It's not even that. I think that he's going to have a great year with the Clippers, honestly, this year without Kawhi. That's when he kind of looks at his best, when he's got the ball in his hands most of the time. I just don't think that they have the talent and the depth to match up with a Warriors or a Nuggets or a Jazz on a night-to-night basis. And this West is going to be competitive, and somebody's going to have to get knocked down into these lower ranks. And I just feel like the Clippers are that team. I don't like Eric Bledsoe on this roster really that much. He's kind of like gone by the wayside for me. Like, he's not really a guy that I want to see on the floor a lot. You're relying a lot on like Nick Batum, and it's not a team that I'm as bullish on as I would have been last year, even with or without Kawhi, just because of the pieces they've kind of have around now after the offseason and everything. I don't know. It's just not it wasn't an inspiring offseason, especially with the injury. I mean,
lost Patrick Beverly too.
Lost Rondo, obviously. They didn't really do much to bolster the roster. Like, Justice Winslow was probably the outside of the Bledsoe trade. But Justice Winslow has been a guy who can't stay on the court either. We love Jason Preston, the OU kid, the kid out of OU. Maybe he's a guy that can be electric for them. But I don't know if he's making an impact for them this year. So I think that's just the issue with the Clippers. So what about the Blazers? The Blazers really didn't do much either this year. And there was all the Dame trade rumors. He said he never wanted to get traded, and he hasn't been traded yet. They lose Melo, lose Zach Collins, lose Derrick Jones Jr. in a trade. They get Larry Nance in there in that trade. No Ennis Cantor this year, but they got Ben Blackmore, Pat from the Clippers, obviously. Dennis Smith Jr., I don't think he's really much of an impact. Tony Snell, Cody Zeller, nothing really. So they kind of it's the same core again.
I was gonna say much of the same, dude. Like,
like
it's
not
role
much
players that don't really move the needle are the same guys they bring in every offseason. They're usually different guys, but a lot of the same result. I had confidence putting the Trailblazers in this category because I think they're a playoff team. And maybe if we see a super electric season from both Lillard and McCollum, because Lillard can't do it himself. We've seen it. I love Lillard. He's great. He can't do it himself. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, they just seem to be content with being middle of the pack, and I think that's where they're going to be this year.
Yeah, I think so too. So what about the Pelicans or Grizzlies? Who are you higher on going into the year between those two?
Ooh,
because the Pelicans are kind of a mess.
I think the Grizzlies, dude. I really do. I just think they're a tougher bunch. I mean, we already look, I don't want to hop on this train, but I've been seeing, people all over not all over the NBA world, but I've been seeing some, journalists and analysts that cover the NBA saying that they are worried about Zion's weight yet again because apparently he's looking the biggest he ever has. Obviously, he's already have some injury issues early in his career. We saw what happened when he blew out of his shoe in college and hurt himself that way. And I'm not saying that I don't think the Pelicans are going to be good because of Zion's weight, but like it's a thing to consider. And, injuries, Brandon Ingram's been a guy who's been banged up before too.
Yep, that's true.
I don't know. I really don't. The Pelicans might be the hardest team for me to read in the Western Conference, I think. I don't really know what to make of this group. Wow, what are your thoughts here on the Pelicans?
I'm much higher on the Grizzlies just because I think that infrastructure is very good. Ja has proven he's going to be a premier point guard in this league for years to come. Mm-hmm. I think that dude's only getting better. I didn't really like. I touched on it before. I didn't like the Valanciunas trade. I think Valanciunas. I understand why they did it. It's more. I think it's more for cap reasons. I think Adams' contract is up sooner. And Adams is a better defensive presence, but Valanciunas was a great offensive player for them last year. He was very effective. And I think they're going to miss him. And Adams was kind of slipping a little bit last year with the Pelicans, but that could have just been the fit next to Zion, which I don't think was a good fit anyways. I'm kind of high on Zaire Williams. I know that he was like not a highly thought of prospect. He was a very high prospect going into the season last year and then kind of disappointed at Stanford. And that's how he ended up dropping to where he is. But I think that with the one and dones, man, you never know. It could just be a bad situation in college, and you never know. It's an 18-year-old kid at college for the first time. Maybe, who knows? Like, could have just been an overwhelming. I think the talent is there, and he kind of fits perfectly into what they need as one of those wings. Jaren Jackson Jr. can stay healthy. I think he's just incredible. I think he could be a defensive player of the year candidate when healthy. And with the Pelicans, like you said, about talking about Zion potentially being overweight, he does have a foot injury. I mean, that he had surgery on his foot over the summer and everything. Like that's concerning for me for a guy that it's the same leg that he's hurt before too. Like that's concerning for a guy who's had weight issues coming into the league, who's as big as he is, and he's only how old? 21 now, and he's had all these issues with his leg. Like that's a concern. His health has been a concern his whole career. So I don't know. And losing Lonzo for pretty much, nothing. Like they didn't really get anything for Lonzo. Yeah. I think they're gonna miss him a lot. I just think if Zion can be healthy and be what we think he is, that he can carry them to maybe being higher up on this category. But it just doesn't look good for a franchise that's never really put it together, and they don't seem like they have the structure there to kind of be a winner. And it just doesn't look like they have that, especially compared to these three teams.
Is Devontae Graham their starting point guard this season? I believe he is.
Yes. And that's another thing I'm worried about too, is like how good is Devontae Graham really? Like, how is he going to be effective enough to be a starting point guard in the West? I don't
Right.
know.
Because he had great flashes, but it was also when he really didn't need to be relied on in Charlotte. I mean, you had guys
Yeah.
like Terry Rozier, LaMelo Ball there. Yeah, I mean, we talked about it too. Bledsoe being back on the Clippers, that's another guy the Pelicans lose. I don't think he was doing too much for the Pelicans last year, but losing Lonzo, losing Bledsoe, that's two veterans that you're losing at the point guard position right there, and it could be a lot to handle for Devontae Graham. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I think Pelicans for me, biggest question mark. Biggest reason is the biggest person on their team, Zion Williamson. I think he's a question mark legitimately going into the season. I think he'll be great when he's on the court. There's never a doubt about that. He bullies people. He gets rebounds. He does things that most people can't. But, best ability is availability. So we'll see. I'm not rooting for Zion to be
100%.
injured or anything. Of course not. But it's going to be tough.
100%. 100%. All right. So let's get into our last category here with the bottom section of the West. Who is the most likely to make the playoffs? We got the Minnesota Timberwolves, Houston Rockets, Sacramento Kings, San Antonio Spurs, Oklahoma City Thunder. So take it wherever you want here, Dunny. Which team do you think are you highest on out of this group here?
Timberwolves. I think
Yeah.
it's easy for me. I honestly debated putting them on the teams where which one of these teams could maybe make the Western Conference Finals. I don't really think that for the Timberwolves. But it seems a little mean just how talented they are to put them in this bottom tier of teams in the West. I just strictly pick the T-Wolves for the chance of making the playoffs. I think you have to just D'Lo, Karl Anthony Towns, and Anthony Edwards. They should be fully healthy this year. They should have those three guys rocking together. I mean, dude, that's going to be a fun big three. D'Angelo Russell is, I think, still one of the most underrated point guards in the league. Cat doesn't get enough love for how talented he is. And then, I mean, we don't really need to talk about Edwards, dude. That him and LaMelo took the league by storm last year.
Yeah, that's facts. And I think that's the thing is like Cat's never had a guy like Edwards next to him on his wing. And Edwards, again, people don't want to project. Edwards could be like a 25 point a game scorer all year. That's what he showed at the end of last year. I don't think that there's any sign of him slowing down at all. And Cat is one of the most talented players in the league who's just waiting for a team to put it together. I think this team is clearly the team that's closest to the playoffs, closest to the play-in, and closest to getting in with that, even the upper category with the Mavs and the Jazz and all of them up there too. I think that if things break right and Edwards is a much improved on last year all around, and Russell can kind of provide that steady point guard play that they need, this can be a fun roster. It's going to be a fun team no matter what. Like, I'm very excited to watch some Timberwolves games this year, which I've never been able to say in my life before. I really don't think.
Yeah.
I think the Kings are my team though, and I can't quit the Kings. They're like they're just like a bad drug for me, bro.
Go back to this time last year. I think you were singing the same song, bro.
Yo, it's not. It's been like 4 years now, and I can't do it. But it just makes sense. Like, the pieces are there. I don't trust Luke Walton very much, but the pieces are there for a team that can make the playoffs. And I think the West is the most wide open it's ever been. And maybe this is the year Halliburton takes another step forward. Fox came into his own a little bit last year. They've still got Buddy Hield on the roster. And this is the team I still think too is prime for the Ben Simmons trade too. And so if it's a Fox for Simmons type deal or Hield for Ben Simmons, like, he's a guy that could change their fortunes too. But I'm not trying to project any trades or anything out. I just think that this team is solid all the way through. They're gonna be hanging around the play-in for most of the year. That's basically the area they've been in for the last 15 years of their existence. So I feel pretty confident to say they can hang around like the 10 seed and maybe make that play-in. So yeah, I'm bullish, and especially compared. I would still put Minnesota ahead of them, but compared to the Spurs, I'm not very high on. And I think OKC and Houston's going to be fun, but Houston's going to be bad. OKC is just going to be bad. The Spurs might not be fun. and they're probably going to be pretty bad too.
Yeah.
So it was like Sacramento's going to be fun, and maybe decent.
Davion
Minnesota's
Mitchell
gonna be really
too.
fun. Yeah, that's true. Dude, they got so many guards that are just so like some of my favorite guards to watch. Like, I love
Talented,
watching
yeah.
Fox, love watching Halliburton, loved watching Mitchell in college. Heald is electric on some nights. Like it's a fun squad. They haven't been able to put it together. So maybe this is the year they can make a little playoff run.
Yeah, Halliburton was just very exciting to watch last year. The transition from college to NBA just came so naturally for him. People were worried about his jump shot. He was knocking down threes confidently, making, Magic Johnson like passes in transition, which he showed a little bit of in college too. I love Halliburton. I'm with you, dude. Like I think I'm leaning Minnesota just because I think they have a better structure right now. And the Kings have been disappointing with good rosters in the past, but they're right there. It's definitely Minnesota, the Kings, and then like you said, the rest of these guys. I think San Antonio. I don't. They're going to be boring, dude. Like Popovich is obviously a great coach, dude, but like they don't have much going on there in San Antonio. I don't think it's going to be a thing like last year and 2 years ago, don't look now, like 4 weeks into the season, but the Spurs are the 4 seed. Like, I don't think we're having any of that shock this year. And I think OKC is just going to be bad.
Yeah.
Like, SGA,
really bad.
Great player, but they just don't. I mean, I think they're purposely doing it. They just want all the draft picks.
Can they win 20 games even? Like, I don't know. I don't know if they can win 20 games.
That's asking a lot from these guys.
It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough.
They have Giddey though, right?
They do have Josh Giddey.
Yeah,
they do. He could be fun.
He's fun on TikTok, so they can hang their hat on that.
I feel like him and SGA, there'll be some good content out of them this year.
Yeah,
that'll be It's gonna be.
They almost had Kemba Walker.
Almost, yeah, for a split second. Yeah, I don't know. OKC it's gonna be a battle between them and Houston to see who ends up with the number 1 pick or the number 1 odds for the pick.
I'm honestly hyped about Houston, dude. I wasn't really until I saw a glimpse of Jalen Green in Summer League, and then the preseason, dude, with Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr. Like almost sporting the same exact hairstyle. KPJ's got like the few dangly braids coming from his big hairdo. But I don't know, dude. They're just both two very dynamic guards who can just put the ball in the basket like at will. And at the very least, I think I like that this is just like the fun group of teams in the West. No heavy expectations for any of them. Maybe Minnesota, but like they'll be fun. I mean, the Kings and the Rockets, man. I think these two teams could be a lot of fun. I'm honestly really excited to watch as much Houston basketball as I can just to tune in for Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr. Also, my guy Daniel Tice is on their team too.
That's facts. And Kelly Olynyk's on the Pistons now.
The Pistons, yeah.
I can't keep track of Kelly. Keep track of Kelly. That's what I was thinking. Like
he was on the Rockets last year, I think.
It has to be like the Houston and Detroit and OKC probably the 3 worst teams this year. Like I would consensus 3 worst.
Yeah.
Maybe Orlando thrown in there too. But it'd be way more fun to be bad in Houston than it would be to be bad in Detroit. Like like I'm just thinking for Jalen Green and those like Porter, like they're just gonna be in a better mindset the whole time. Cade's gonna be roughing it in Detroit this year.
He's gonna have no option but to work on his game, so at least he'll get better. I mean, he's not going out doing anything fun. So
who's winning the West? We're not making official picks right now, but we'll save that for the next pod. But what are we thinking for the West here? I'm
gonna pull a Stephen A. like kind of what he wanted out of the Brooklyn Nets last year. Like it better be the Lakers.
That's facts.
It better be the freaking Lakers, dude. Like Bron really couldn't ask for much more to be put around him. He's got one of his best friends. He's got a Hall of Fame point guard who's still, like you mentioned, Westbrook is still playing at an unbelievable level. Hopefully Anthony Davis stays healthy. I mean, we talked a lot about them at the top of the show, so I don't really need to go into how good this roster is. But
Yeah.
and then they drafted. I actually didn't talk about this guy. They drafted my dude Mac McClung, dude. Like
that's true.
He is. Like,
Mac's gonna have a role there.
Yeah, he maybe, but maybe not. But they still like even their guys who probably won't touch the court are very talented players. I think I'd be silly not to say the Lakers. I would like it to be someone else. Truthfully, like I would love to see like I don't think they can, but I would love to see Luke and the Mavs do it. I would like to see the Nuggets do it. If Jamal can get back healthy and kind of help them towards the end of the season. But I don't know. I'm going Lakers. How about you?
Oh man. I picked the Lakers the last 2 years to go to the NBA Finals. So as much as I would love to sit here and say the Golden State Warriors, they're the team that I really want to pick, I'm leaning Lakers. I'm not official picks will be on the next pod. We get in deep betting preview. We go through all the odds. We make our finals picks, all the shebangs. We'll get there eventually. I'm not picking the Sixers again. I can promise you that.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
But I really, really want to pick the Warriors just to be the one. If Steph goes off and it has like the magical year, I can say that I have it. But right now, I can't go against the Lakers. It's the third year in a row. It's LeBron. Like everything you just said. It just makes too much. They're just head and shoulders above everybody. No matter what happens, that's why I'm so high on the Warriors, because I think no matter what, the Lakers are just head and shoulders above everybody in the West. And if they aren't first in the West, it's something they did wrong, because they are better than all these teams. Their roster's better. The only team that can get to that point, I think, without making like some big splashy trade or anything like that, is the Warriors, the way they're currently constructed. If the young guys, are better than we expected, and Clay comes back and he's better
Clay comes back, right?
Yeah, then that's a team that can contend with the Lakers right away. But that's just so many unknowns. The thing about the Lakers, we have a lot of knowns. Like, a lot of dudes have been around for a while, and how are they gonna all mesh together? You kind of trust that more than warning how guys are coming back from injury and rookies. So it's kind of like opposite ends of the spectrum. Like, what do you prefer, the veteran laden team or the young team with some superstars on it, and see how they come together? I might have just convinced myself into the Warriors, and by Tuesday we might get to that point. But I'm going with the Lakers and LeBron right now, and holding out that hope. So yeah, let's ride with that. Then anything else touch on before we go? Any football? Anything? Any fun? You had a very emotional football experience Sunday night. I know that.
Yeah,
we haven't even talked about it yet. No, I know that it was that for you. So.
Yeah, Brady's homecoming to Foxborough was something else, man. All the emotions, I thought it lived up to the hype. It wasn't the most exciting game on the gridiron, but you could see Brady and Bill just kind of having the brain battle.
I think Bill won. I think Bill won the brain battle. Like, Bill shut down. Yeah. Bill frustrated Tom a lot of that game. It just he just didn't have the dogs.
It was our game.
Run with
them. I think it was the Pats game to win. They just, the long field goal in the rain, tough. Some people say go for it on fourth. I'm happy with the result though. Mac looked good against a great defense in the rain. All the emotions.
You can't sniff 19 straight completions in the NFL, no matter who it's against or anything else. Like, that is a feat, man. I don't care what he's doing. That's a feat to be proud of.
So a lot of positives to take away from it. I mean, emotional, the loss sucks, but yeah, I mean, I liked it. I enjoyed the game, and I think it put a better taste in my mouth about the Patriots offense moving forward, which is great.
Well, and now you guys get the Texans, who my Buffalo Bills just played and smacked up. So that's going to be a nice, fun week for you. Yeah. Davis Mills is going to be in hell yet again. Poor guy. And then I get a Bills Chiefs game on Sunday night, which is, I mean, any game against the Chiefs is always big, but this is obviously AFC Championship rematch back in Arrowhead. The last time I looked it up the other day, and the last time the Bills. I was looking up old Bills Chiefs games because I was bored during work, whatever. And they played on a Sunday night in 2003 in Arrowhead. The Bills lost 38-5. I don't think that's going to happen again, but it wasn't the best omen when I was looking up the results and saw 38-5 on a Sunday night in Arrowhead. I don't think the Bills are going to be held to 5 points by that horrible Chiefs defense either. I think we'll get the overs 56. We were talking about earlier, a couple of my buddies. I think that's you should probably rail that over. That's probably a safe bet for both those teams on the field. So yeah, fun couple football weeks as we get ready and come into basketball season in just like 10 days, 9 days now. Like it's right around 10 days, I think, when this comes out on Friday.
Yep.
Right around the corner. And then and then you have no time for anything else. You got weekday NBA, weekend football, and NBA. It's schedules filled up for the fall. It's going to be great time. You see down here below, follow us at Happy Hour Hoops 1, subscribe, Happy Hour Hoops on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So for Dunny here, Jake Micah. We'll see you guys next week with our last leg of our preview before we get cracking on some NBA games. Yeah, we're ready to go for opening night. So have a great night, y'all. Peace. Stay hydrated.